Hello, this is Helen Thomas and the CDFM study group. I want to go over CDFM Module 4, Competency 1 at this time, which is Goal, Strategy, and Decision Support. So remember that the DoD has 3 support systems. They use JSIDS, PPBE, and the Defense Acquisition System. So let's start with the National Security Council. So the National Security Council establishes the national security strategy. That's when they do their analysis. The council does their analysis to determine what priorities they're going to have for the country, what threats we face, what things that has to be done to protect this nation and our allies, for a matter of fact. So they look at the national security strategy. Then each agency, the DoD being one, takes the big op order, which is the national security strategy, and then they establish their individual agency strategy. So at the DoD level, the DoD is going to have to establish the national defense strategy to meet the big op order, which is the national security strategy. So the DoD, in order to determine the national defense strategy, to put it into action, the DoD uses 3 support systems, which we talk about on page 4.1.2, which is, and I do them in this order, JSIDS, Joint Capabilities Integration and Development System, Planning, Programming, Budget and Execution, PPBE, and DAS, the Defense Acquisition System. So the JSIDS is the warfighters. The Joint Chiefs of Staff from each service, they get down together in the JROC, Joint Requirements Oversight Council. So all the vice chief of the JROC make up the JROC, and the chairman of the JROC is the vice chairman of the Joint Chief of Staff. So what they do now is, now they have the National Defense Strategy, the JROC, through the JSIDS process, do an analytical review to determine if there are any capability shortfalls. Do we have the capability now to meet that strategy, or do we have to develop something in the near future to meet that national defense strategy? So JSIDS is the warfighters, the users that are coming up with the plan. And then once the JROC is completed, they publish the requirement in an initial capabilities document to say, this is the problem, this is the capability gap that we have, and this is the solution that we present to fix that capability gap in the ICD. While doing the JSIDS process, the JROC is looking at the .MLPF, the doctrine, the organization, the training, leader development, material, facilities. All of those things are being reviewed. If it is a material solution to fix the problem, the capability gap, then it triggers the acquisition system. If it's any other, okay, we just need to increase personnel, manpower, build bigger organization, we just need funding. That's the PPBE process. The PPBE process is run by the resource managers, RM, and the defense acquisition system, that's the process where you buy the item. So those are the buyers that's in charge of that. So JSIDS is the warfighter or the unit, the users. Defense acquisition system are the buyers, the ones who have to buy the item because we don't have that capability already in-house. And PPBE is the resource management. How do we fund the requirement? So we know that the vice chairman of the Joint Chief of Staff has oversight of JSIDS. We know that the deputy SecDef is in charge of PPBE, and National Defense Strategy, based on the 2011 study guide, is USD ATNL, which when you look in the 2020 study guide for Module 1, 2, and 3, you see that title has changed. But we're going with the 2011 study guide for this. So everything is mentioned again on page 413. So it just kind of recaps what I said. On page 414, Is again, I'm going over these because I've now taken the test. I've now passed the module 4. So now I have a better insight in the things that we need to focus on. So on the diagram on page 414, resource allocation process overlap, is you need to know the who, what, why, where, when's, what's going on. If they tell you today is current year, May of that year, you need to be able to just follow. Take a ruler, if you don't have a ruler, take a piece of paper, draw the line down to see what's going on at that period. Because as you know, PPBE continuously overlap. Excuse me, the whole resource. So based on the fiscal year, you need to be able to tell what is happening in that time frame. Page 415 goes into, again, the PPBE process. So your POM is your program proposal. Planning is where, now that we know what we want to do, we put the planning in place. We come up with the defense planning guidance, because before you do anything, there's always a guidance. There's always some document that gives you that fiscal constraint. What are your limitations to move forward? Programming is now where you prioritize things, because you know that you're not going to have enough funding to do everything that you want to do. So programming is, excuse me, okay, let me pause. Program now is where you come up with the specific items and prioritize those items. Those are your gross costs in your programming. The DCAPE is in charge of the programming phase. The USD for policy is in charge of planning. So these are knowledge from the other 3 modules. The budgeting phase of PEB is resource management, which is the Undersecretary of Defense Comptroller. Through the fall review, they communicate with OMB to go over the budget for inclusion into the press budget. So the final decision of the budget at the SecDef is the resource management decision. Based on this, so I know if you're studying the 2020 study guide for module 1, 2, and 3, it's going to be different. Make sure for this module 4, you are using the most current study guide, which is currently 2011. So RMDs are the final document published in the programming and the budgeting phase. The QDR, Quadrennial Defense Review, or the National Defense Strategy. Those 2 terms mean the same thing. So typically in the first year of the presidential election, they approve the national security strategy. And then the second year is when of a presidential election is when they come up with the QDR, Quadrennial Defense Review, or the 4-year strategy. So make sure you can able to decipher. The first year, think about it, the first year president is sworn in, that January, then they come up with a national security strategy. What's the strategy going to be for the country for the next 4 years? And based on that, the second year is when the DOD comes up with the defense strategy. Page 417, the Joint Capabilities Integration and Development System, JSIDS, again, is made up of Joint Chiefs of the various services. They make up the JROC, Joint Requirements Oversight Council. And here in this first paragraph is where it tells you that when they're doing the analysis, they're looking at .MLPF, Doctrine, Organization, Training, Material, Leadership and Education, Personnel and Facilities, .MLPF. So the JSIDS implements a capability-based approach. We're looking at, this is the strategy, what capabilities do we have? We check. What capability gaps do we have? Is it a doctrine problem? Is it a material problem? Is it a personnel problem? Do we need more personnel? So based on what that answer is, will determine where we move forward. So on page 418, that diagram, if you see to the far left, you have the JSIDS analysis. Once the JROC is completed, then they publish an initial capabilities document. That would then trigger the acquisition system. not the program. It doesn't mean you're going to go on a full-fledged acquisition program, but if a material solution, then you go into a material development document, the MDD. And then you have the Defense Acquisition Board. So throughout the rest of the this section is where you're going to go over those acronyms and the different parts. So material development decision is the first phase. Then you have milestone A, refining the analysis, capabilities development document, capabilities production document. So the idea behind this module 4 is for you to be able to tell what is happening at each phase. So those diagrams are going to come important once you get through the material first. If it's a material solution on page 419, then it triggers the acquisition system. So this is just reiterating what I already said. One key principle of the defense acquisition system is the use of acquisition program categories, that ACAT-1, is to say that it's a major acquisition program, or ACAT-1A, a major automated information system. So the most expensive programs are called the MDAPs, Major Defense Acquisition Programs, or MAIS, Major Automated Information System. So these are things that you should already have studied in Module 1, 2, and 3, especially Module 2. USD ATNL is the MDA for DoD level programs. That's what it's saying at the top of page 10. Or Defense Acquisition Executive. So it's the same title, MDA, Milestone Decision Authority, or Defense Acquisition Executive, or Component Acquisition Executive. At the DoD level, they have, for the MDAPs, they have Defense Acquisition Board. For the MAIS, they have the ITAB. That's the information. Let me get exactly what it says instead of me guessing. USD Acquisition, ITAB, Information Technology Acquisition Board. So just like you have the Defense Acquisition Board to determine the DoD level programs to move forward, you have the ITAB, Information Technology Acquisition Board. Okay, talk about the mains. Remember, DoD level programs, MDAP 1. ACAT-1 Delta, ACAT-1 Charlie is component. The D behind it tells you is DoD. The C says component. The automated side is ACAT-1 AM, A for automation, M for MAIS, Major Automation Information System, MAIS. And if it's a DoD level, is ACAT-1 AC for component. Evolutionary acquisition. Remember that. It's either a single-step acquisition or evolutionary. So both the strategies, the technology development strategy and the acquisition. So initially we come up with a strategy to develop the technology, because you got to know exactly what you're trying to develop or build. And then once you know that, then you go into the acquisition strategy. So the purpose of technology development is to reduce technology risk. All the risks, you want to identify your risk up front so you can come up with mitigating factors to those risks. Top of page 4115. The acquisition approach, that's what I was talking about. So DoD either uses an evolutionary approach or single step, meaning instead of, they don't automatically always have to go material solution analysis, milestone A, technology maturation or development, milestone B. They may go straight to production because we already have that capability. We just need more. We got to get approval to buy more. So we go into single step or evolutionary. Page 4118 talks about the acquisition program baseline. So when you're starting off with the program, The program manager is essential because you need to know what's my starting cost. What are things going to cost me? We have this capability gap. We got an initial capabilities document. We kind of know, we did some analysis of the alternative. We kind of determine what it is that we want to develop or buy. And then we come up with the material solution analysis. Milestone A, you also need the acquisition program baseline. I need to know what are my starting numbers. So the program manager is essential, and he's responsible for coming up with the acquisition program baseline. That's the starting numbers to be able to move forward. Per Penn U.S. Code 2435, the DoD cannot obligate funds for a major defense program after the program enters system development. May not obligate funds for a major defense acquisition program after the program enters system development and demonstration, now known as the engineering and manufacturing. So each phase, you got to have the milestone decision authority decision to determine you move forward, then you get your funding to move forward. So always think when you deal with acquisition, cost, schedule, performance. Cost, schedule, performance. And what a program manager does is he's looking for areas where you can save costs or mitigate. The program manager may treat the difference between what it is that we're trying to accomplish, the objective, and its associated threshold. So you can't just, oh, it's going to cost 5 million, 6 million, 7 million. There's your threshold. There's a limit that is given in the beginning. So the acquisition program baseline, once he come up with the baseline, which is the least amount you can pay to get the job done, from the objective to that threshold is your trading space. Things you can take away, you can add, that's your trading space. So the best time to reduce costs in an acquisition program is early on in the acquisition program. So that's where you come up with cost as an independent variable, which you're going to see later. So this was CDFM Module 4, Competency 1, Goal Strategies and Decision Support. Next, we're going to move on to acquisition category and the systems engineering plan, how we actually put this plan into action. This is Competency 2, Systems Engineering. So this is Helen Thomas and the CDFM Study Group. Be sure to subscribe so that you can continue to get the updates as we move forward in analyzing a deeper analysis of the CDFM Module 4 information. So thank you, and I'll see you guys again next time. This is Helen Thomas and the CDFM Study Group signing off.